Welcome to the Cal Park Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co host, Jason, calling in from the Bat Cave in Indianapolis. Jason, how are you, my good man?
There you go, man. I'm still loving it. Loving that loud voice of yours. Be loud. Be loud. But hey, man. Hey, it's Tuesday. I gotta say, man, like I've been saying every week. It's like every week I'm waiting. Like, okay, is it Tuesday yet? Is it Tuesday yet? You know. And this week wasn't any different. So I think both of us are actually truly enjoying doing this, even though it's only once a week for now.
Yeah, I'm
Hint.
sure. I'm sure if we were to think long and hard, that we probably wouldn't have much of an issue finding a way to do a second episode in a week. So I am enjoying. To your point, I am enjoying it. Um, and I'm enjoying being loud with you. So
You call me loud?
I'm not calling you loud. I know you are loud.
That's I'm not sure if that's an insult, but okay.
It's not an insult. If anything, it's a term of endearment. You know how it is. You get loud with certain folks in your life when you're around them.
Fair enough.
It's like black people in the movie theater.
That's so racist.
uh, is it though?
No comment.
Right. Oh man. Folks, thank you for listening. This is episode 19 of the Cal Park Bros podcast. For the uninitiated, Cal Park Bros is a weekly podcast for fans of culture, current events, sports, life, and entertainment.
And as always, we are your hosts, Terrence and Jason. And every single Thursday, we release a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and the athletes we love.
And even some of the athletes we loathe. Folks, no matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
Folks, this is important. For more Cal Park Bros content, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube under the handle Cal Park Bros or Cal Park Bros Podcast for more behind the scenes of the Cal Park Bros show and to engage with us every single day. But also, the Cal Park Bros is available to listen and subscribe for free wherever you listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, if you like us, hell, why wouldn't you?
I'm going to say it again, the best line in podcast history. Gotta love it, man. People are loving it. People are doing it. We appreciate all of it. So thank you, folks.
Yep, at least our podcast history, Jason. Yeah, man, I've been so busy this week between getting the kiddos back in school and just keep an eye on stuff at the homestead, and work is showing no signs of slowing down. Yeah, I've really even haven't had a chance to really fixate on things like listenership or weekly stats for the episodes. But Jason hit me to something pretty cool that we now have a new country. Indonesia is been initiated to the Cal Park Bros podcast. What up, Indonesia? Woohoo!
I know, dude. I saw that. I'm like, I logged into, to Anchor and looking at our home base, and I saw that somebody from Indonesia or some people from Indonesia started listening. I'm like, I had that dramatic gasp. And then and another cool thing, I was able to notice where they actually were listening to us, and they're actually in Bali. So I consider that a huge win. That if people are actually in Bali amongst all that greatness they have to experience there, but they're listening to us while they're doing it, hey, that's a win, bro. That's a win. So for those of keeping track of our goal, that's 3 continents down, 4 to go.
Nice. Yeah, man. It's always a good sign when it's like, hey, it's a new listener. It's a new opportunity to share our voice with the world. So that's cool, man. For those listening, in the United States and elsewhere in our wonderful world, we appreciate you and know that we do this for you, but mostly for us.
It's all
Kidding.
about us, folks. All about us.
Yeah. Let's get this show on the road, man. The first thing we wanted to talk about, since many parents like myself are sending their children back to school in person after about a year and a half of remote learning. There has been a debate about, for those who choose to stay remote, if remote workers should get paid less. Um, I'm checking out this article related to the Business Insider, and they indicated that Google was going to make a decision to cut remote workers' pay. According to this article, Google is the most recent tech employer to plan to potentially cut the pay of employees choosing to work 100% remotely. Their compensation would be based on where they live, not the office they were once attached to. For those who choose to live in a cheaper area, it can mean a significant pay cut. Others in tech, such as Facebook, Twitter, or VMware, have announced similar plans. At least some companies have said salaries could be adjusted up. The gut reaction to such a move and the tone of most of the coverage is outrage. Greedy companies taking away from workers who've given their all during the pandemic and putting families and marginalized employees living in cheaper areas at a disadvantage. What this analysis is lacking is a genuine understanding of how companies set compensation and why some of the world's most generous employers who have no interest in employee mutiny come to the conclusion that docking remote workers' pay was their best option. Hold on, fam. That sounds like bullshit. Can we just start there? Because this is totally an opinion piece that they're trying to stipulate basically you should get paid off of what you do and also where you happen to reside. And they're trying to make it a play for equity. Like, am I doing the job for the company or not? That's the question.
Well, yeah, I definitely hear you. That it definitely sounds completely fishy. Um, the fact of the matter is, whenever a company has more remote workers, they're saving money. If there's not anybody in the building, run up the cost of the building with electricity, paying people to clean it, no workers in the cafeteria, utility bills, things like that. You're saving money. So
At least on paper, because these some of these same people, these bean counters, Jason, they tried to say the same thing about schools when children were remote, ignoring the fact that whether your kid is there or not, someone still has to keep an eye and make sure that all that shit actually works. Like, yeah, and you may not have as many, you may the electric bill may be down, but you still need a fucking structure.
what do
You
you
know,
mean a structure?
you still need Google still needs a headquarters. They still need some sort of hub.
Do they?
Whether yeah, every business needs some sort of brick and mortar structure.
I debate that highly, but okay.
Okay. Jason, I tell you this much. When your employer decides they no longer need a brick and mortar, then you can come back to me on this. When my
Well,
employer,
no, 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 no,
my
no, no, no,
employer,
no, 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 no,
I mean,
no, 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 no. Hang on,
I also
hang on.
worked remotely the last 15, 16 months. And guess what? We still needed to have a physical structure in order to produce our goods and services. So that's why I reject this outright.
Well, hang on. I want to ask a question about what goods and services need to have a brick and mortar place to run its business. I'm not saying now. Yeah, now of course there are some businesses that need brick and mortar, but I'm referring to any of those companies that actually can allow remote workers in their corporate headquarters. What need is there to have an actual brick and mortar building? That's what I'm saying.
Okay. All of Google's cloud computing, that shit, does it literally sit in a fucking cloud somewhere up in the sky? No. It needs some sort of space where it resides where it can be secured.
Okay, so I see what you mean with that. Because you're not necessarily referring to a place where employees can come and work. You just mean some sort of structure to where some part of the business can be housed, even if
You need some
employees
sort
aren't
of
working
hub.
there.
You need some sort of hub, sure.
Okay,
But and yeah, some people, especially now that they've been doing remote work almost exclusively for a year, hell, They may not want to go back. They may not feel compelled to go back.
Well, we're going to talk about that too. But yeah, I definitely agree. The whole move to cut, the pay of remote workers to save money. Well, to save money, that's kind of in a lot of cases probably for Google is ridiculous. Are they going to, help them make more? Is it going to help them make more money? Sure. But the fact of the matter is, in the recently quarter report earnings, Alphabet, Google's parent company and whatnot, they reported a profit of $18.5 billion. I don't know about you, Terrence, but I think that's a lot of money. So them simply cutting the pay of their employees just because they happen to work somewhere that's not in Washington or in New York, if they're around one of those hubs or whatever, or not around those hubs, I guess, and say that's trying to save money, it's probably a little bit of penny pinching, we'll say. It's kind of like when the WWE cuts people and they said it's for budget cuts, even though they also are reporting record profits. Okay. That may be part of the reason why you're doing it, but it can't be the real reason. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you that that is total crap. So you also mentioned already some other companies are doing this: Facebook, Twitter, VMware, ServiceNow, stuff like that are also doing it as well. What I find interesting though is that, and this is also the case for my employer, I'm sure yours would say the same thing, is that while we were working remotely, productivity is also up. We're getting more work done. So that goes more into the point of that you mentioned earlier that we're all doing the same job we were doing when we were in the office. That part hasn't changed. But now I'm doing more of it. I'm getting more stuff done. I'm more productive. So why, from an employee standpoint, why are you choosing to cut my pay, even though I'm not being less productive in any way whatsoever? I'm still being a great employee that I was before. Um, one thing that one article I did find that was pretty interesting is that, it's an article that I found on Bloomberg.com that indicates there are a good percentage of workers who actually are willing to take pay cuts if they never have to go back to the office again. Like, for example, if your employer said, "Hey, we're going to allow you to work remotely permanently if you want, but we're going to cut your pay to do it." Some people are actually probably willing to take that opportunity because they would rather work from home, especially now that you've been doing it, like you said, for the last year plus. And like we talked about in the previous episode, now that everybody's going back to the office, they're missing that remote work environment. They want to, get back to working from home. So in this situation, this timing of it, if you're an employer looking to hit somebody with that option, now is probably a good time to do it. Say, hey, you miss working from home? Well, I got a deal for you, but here's your option. Now, some people wouldn't do that, but there are probably plenty of people that would. This article I found again on Bloomberg.com indicates, based off a survey, that possibly up to 65% of the workers might be willing to do that. Now, of course, it's going to depend on how much less pay we're talking about. I would admit, if my employer came to me with that, I'd be like, I'd have to think about it. Depending on how much it was, I would think about it. I don't know what you would think about that if somebody presented that to you, but I guess some of that depends on how much you're already making in the first place. Like, Google employees make a pretty good salary already. So if you took back 5% of it, I'm sure you'd probably be willing to consider it. So, but what do you think about that?
I think I wouldn't even consider it. I'd be like, absolutely not. Because first off, I believe that my value is my value no matter where I show up. The What you're asking me to do effectively is agree to something that you can't even ensure going forward it's going to be 100% like that. So,
What do you mean?
because there's always going to be something that comes up. If for some odd reason you had, let's say, you had a computer, you had a hardware malfunction, you got to get your computer swapped out. Congrats. You now have to go back to the office to address that.
Oh, but believe me, I thought about that. If our company ever decided to go 100% remote permanently, first of all, that would be complete heaven, by the way. But yeah, of course, I would. And I think I found another article from what was it, Reuters or whatnot, that talked about people, getting the option to work permanently from home, and they are moving away from, in lesser expensive areas because they don't have to work from home. But I thought about that too. If that option ever came up, would I stay in Indiana? Would I move somewhere else? If I did, how far would I want to go because of that option? Like if I had to go back to the office for whatever reason, be it tech issues or anything else, if I'm floating away in Hawaii somewhere and I got to buy a ticket to come back to Indiana from Hawaii, which, obviously is a cost. So I have thought about that. But again, it's something to think about because, again, everybody would love to live where they want, but still keep the job they have if they could, right? Like I'm
Right.
sure you love where you work. If you can live in some place that was less expensive than northern Illinois, you know, would you and still keep your job? You might have to think about it. Not saying at the risk of a pay cut, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, listen, the idea of making less money doesn't even enter into the discussion. Like, I just reject the notion outright. Like,
Let me ask.
and I feel like so many of these businesses, and I noticed that this is very much a Silicon Valley like centered discussion anyway,
True.
where, oh, so you got a place like California where the cost of living is fucking ridiculous anyway. Like, for everything that people complain about in Illinois, California's got it 10 times worse. Like, imagine trying to like pay rent or put down 6 months rent, and a shack is like 3 grand a month. Like, fuck that. You know, you want to talk about why consumer spending is down. There's your answer right there.
Yeah, I have a friend who in California who used to live in Chino Hills, California,
Oh,
which is about 45-minute drive away from like downtown LA. And 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 not rush hour traffic, more than that. So Chino Hills actually technically isn't that expensive by comparison. But I remember when she was living there, I asked her, "Hey, just out of curiosity and conversation, like cost of living in California, what's it like?" So she told me she lived in Chino Hills and she had a 1 bedroom apartment. I forget the exact square footage, but it might have been like a thousand square foot or maybe even less than that. But her rent was like $1,500 a month. Right. So and again, it was an apartment, wasn't a house, nothing like that. Not even living anywhere near close really to LA, but yeah, you're still paying that California price. And like you said, we're talking about these tech companies, which are all in San Francisco, which I'm not sure if you looked at the cost of living in San Francisco, but it's way more than Los Angeles. So, you know, and also it's a state that doesn't, I mean, it has a higher minimum wage than most other states, but it still ain't very much by comparison to the cost of living in California. So, um, it's a, it's a very interesting dynamic, but yeah, definitely I would consider living anywhere else if I can keep my same job, same pay. No offense to Indiana, but we all like having options. So,
true
especially
that.
especially for me as a unmarried, no child person. So
Yes, yes, you do appreciate your flexibility. Yeah, man. I think this idea where it's kind of like when NFL owners and general managers try to whip up their fan bases into a frenzy. Like, come on, primetime player, Pro Bowl, 10-year Pro Bowl person, you should take less money for the sake of the team. I'm like, well, first off, I already did that in my last deal. You motherfuckers are gonna pay. Like, Tom Brady, for every deal he ever restructured, I'm like, first off, you gonna pay me now, you gonna pay me later. Fuck that.
well, well, let's just say Tom Brady is and was a very valued employee. Well, no matter what people think of him, he had value.
That
People
is
paid
that
him
is
for it. So
Yup. But yeah, the idea that basically, well, in order to get that perk, I somehow need to be okay with less. Yeah. The juice is not worth the squeeze, my friend.
so touch on minimum wage, and this, I'm not sure this maybe was the design of this topic, but I kind of feel I got to ask: what's your thoughts on minimum wage in this country, either per state or overall?
You want to know my thoughts on minimum wage? I mean, if you want
Absolutely.
my thoughts on minimum wage, talk. What did Chris Rock say about minimum wage? Basically, if it was legal, they'd pay you less.
Well, hey, in some places they do. So so there you
Yeah.
go.
I'm like, I think I look at minimum wage the same way I look at the sign for towel return at the gym. I think it's really fucking sad that they had to put that sign up because chances are people were absolutely putting shit in that receptacle other than towels. You dig? Like every
Yeah.
time I see a sign for something in public, I think, on one hand, oh, that's great. That's a great sign. And on the other hand, I think, it's depressing that humanity needed that sign. Shout out to Jeff Foxworthy. um, yeah, you know, think about what minimum wage was when we were children, 16, 17.
Oh, I can tell you exactly. 475.
Yeah. And I feel like because of my experiences in college, I lucked out and I had gigs where, in my mind, I was like, well, shit, this is pretty good money because it was always above minimum wage. Like,
Ballin'.
we stand. Yep. Yep. Gotta have the dipset. Yeah, going on there.
Yeah. I remember, I'm sure for you, my first, well, second job was working the cafeteria in college. I agree with you. It was definitely above minimum wage, not much more, but still more. So you feel like yours are more important because you're only at that time 18. So you're like, okay, pay me more than minimum wage. Okay, it's not a bad little job, stuff like that. But the interesting thing is that looking at paycor.com, which is a payment, like a paycheck company, essentially 20 of the 25 states still have a minimum wage of $7.25, which most people, you hear that in your head, it's not a lot of money. If you're a teenager, it's great money, but let's also be honest too. A lot of those minimum wage jobs aren't held by just teenagers or just college students. There are some adults that need those type of jobs, but yet they are trying to survive as a regular adult, and God forbid, they have a family, a wife, kids, stuff like that. But essentially, 7.25 an hour, 40 hours a week. That's a little over $15,000 a year before taxes.
Right. Yeah.
Depending on what state you're in. Let's say if you're in Illinois with that, take out the federal tax and state tax, you're down to 12,500 a year, which is right over $1,000 a month. So, like I said, I know people are going to say, "Well, those jobs are designed for teenagers, not adults." You know what?
I
At one point,
it,
well, hang on, hang on,
it,
hang on,
it,
hang on, hang on,
Jason, go
hang
ahead.
on. At one point, that might have been true. At one point, that might have been true, and in some cases, that may still be true. They're designed for teenagers and whatnot. But guess what? That's not the case anymore. It's not the society we're in now. Like I just said, there are some adults that have to have those jobs because they can't get jobs anywhere else. Particularly, I'm thinking of felons, right? Which is in most cases, their own fault. I agree, but the fact of the matter is, they're still a living adult living in this modern society and world where they obviously need to make more than $1,000 a month. I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be bumped up to $15 an hour, but I think anybody listening to this should know that $7.25 an hour, even if you are a teenager, because yeah, even if you are a teenager, it's not enough.
Yeah.
But yet almost half the states in this country, that's still their minimum wage. So
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I Employers could always opt to simply, you know what? We're going to pay above that.
good.
We're going to pay above that. You're a mom and pop. You know what the going rate is for good help. You are literally watching money walk out the door because you don't have staffing, and yet you're still not willing to come up a little bit, just a little smidgen above minimum wage. Then what the hell are you waiting on? Like, you're telling me about it's about the money, and yet you're losing money because you won't pay what you need to pay to get quality employees.
Now, I think based on our previous conversations, I agree with you that some companies are changing that because they need workers because they aren't going back to work right now, which again may be changing with some of the unemployment benefits going away. But you're gonna have to see those companies had to bend. I see people. I seen advertised some of the places around here, like the fast food joints, saying, "Hey, we're now paying up to $11 an hour now," which good and well they weren't paying anywhere near that before, but they are now. Now, obviously,
Yeah,
that was probably up to the franchisee to do that as opposed to a corporate. But ultimately, I agree with you. Those companies could pay more. Why don't they? Cost. I mean, yeah, they could always pay a dollar more, and some of them just do that just to say, "Hey, we pay more than minimum wage." But for the ones that don't, they don't because they're not trying to spend that extra money, which is what it is. Their business. But because they're allowed to do that by their state or federal, they can get away with it.
yeah. I For me, it's always been a cop out. It's like, man, look, and I maintain I do see mom and pop businesses succeeding right now. A lot of that is based on number one, the mom and the papa in some cases is taking on more to ensure that business not only survived COVID, but will thrive after COVID. I also find that some of those businesses spend more of their time trying to market for potential candidates as opposed to bitching and moaning on social media about why the government is the reason why I can't get 7 or 8 teenagers to work for fucking peanuts. That's the biggest issue. Because when people say stuff like, "Oh, that wasn't meant for like a real person job," what you're effectively saying is, I look down on younger people. I look down on younger people. I look down on younger people not only politically but also like financially. Like all of us we consider ourselves to be productive members of society. You want me to do a certain thing. Don't try and my age shouldn't be a factor in that. If it's something you want or need done or produced, that is what should be the determining factor, not whether or not you think, oh, because I'm a young whippersnapper, that I'm a schmuck and that I should be paid nothing.
Is that the new Terrenceism whippersnapper?
Whippersnapper, yeah, that might be the first time we use that on here on Cal Park Bros.
I know I
Uh,
didn't use it, so
well, this also might be the first episode we used a Jim Jones ballin' reference as well.
I'm gonna have
So,
to check that because I don't think that's been the first time. I think we've done that before. I feel like we have.
well, you're more than welcome to listen to all 18 previous episodes. I will not be doing it.
Well, of course, I would love to do that because I love our show, Terrence, as should the people. So yeah. So people, if you want to listen to all previous 18 episodes, by all means, feel free. Because if you like us, why wouldn't you?
you you are straight out of a comic book, my guy.
Well, it's appropriate 'cause I'm wearing a Marvel T-shirt right now. So yeah.
That is appropriate. That is on brand, dude. Yeah. Yeah. I really feel like we've pretty much hit all the high notes on this segment in terms of salary and shenanigans as to why how these companies will try and find ways to not pay you what you're supposed to be paid. And it don't matter if you're a software engineer for Google or some poor schmuck who is going to be saying ding fries are done. Basically, fight for your money. That's my final statement on that. All right. That concludes segment one about remote workers getting paid less potentially. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros, we're going to be talking about QR codes. What are they? And why are we seeing them everywhere on Cal Park Bros?